Hey, everyone, welcome again to the AMATYC 2020 webinar series. We have Jennifer Ackerman with us today from the Equity Committee. Words make a difference, intersectionality, and word problems. The views expressed by the presenter are not necessarily the views of AMATYC, and commercial products mentioned by the presenters are not endorsed by AMATYC. McGraw-Hill is the sponsor of the 2020 AMATYC webinar series. And I will stop sharing, and while Jennifer gets hers up, and just make a couple comments. Feel free to make your comments during the webinar. We'll collect those. And Jennifer, I believe we're going to handle these at the end. Is that correct?
We can handle them as we go, unless
okay.
or until we start to fall behind.
Okay, so as long as Jennifer feels comfortable with her pacing, we can try to answer the questions as we go along. But if you do ask a question that doesn't get answered right away, we will handle it by the end. Some of you may know how to use the raise your hand feature. It would be better if you just put your question in the chat if it's a general question. If it's something that you just need to contact me about, you can use the raise hand feature. I will quickly mention that I've known Jennifer for many years. We're both from Kentucky. We've been to a lot of conferences together. We've talked a lot together. If you've never heard her talk, you're in for a treat this afternoon. And with that, Jennifer, I will mute myself and let you take over.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks very much. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm super excited you're here. I'm super excited to be doing this webinar with you all. All right. So I'm Jennifer Ackerman from Jefferson Community and Technical College, pronouns she, her, and hers. I not only am with part of the Equity Committee, but I'm also on the Innovative Teaching and Learning Committee. So I encourage you all to participate in AMATYC as much as you can. You've got a membership, and obviously you are participating in this webinar, but they also have online discussion groups and information at myamatyc.org, which is supposed to have a nice launch tomorrow. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Hold on. Oh, there we go. So, hi. Can everyone see the slides okay? Pat, can you nod if you can see it? Awesome, thanks. Hello. I have to start out with a friendly smile. It makes me less nervous to see my kids and my dog, and she looks like she's laughing. So I like to start this talk because we're going to be talking, obviously, mathematics, but also our intersectionality. What's my identity? And I am a mom, wife, dog mom. So this is a recent picture, dog pictures, because she's adorable. I am a teacher. That is a huge part of my identity. I shouldn't even use the word teacher. I should use educator and lifelong learner, but I teach at Jefferson. I got my start teaching at Bellarmine University, and I got my start in graduate school at the University of Louisville. And these are my work BFFs. And then I am a swimmer. I did not know swimming was such a big part of my identity because I took off like 25 years from swimming. But as an adult, I've come back to the pool, and it's very much been integrated into my life. And I am a sports fan. So Cardinals, Knights, Lou City, Cubs. And it's okay if you don't like the Cubs. So what I'd like to do, if we were in person, I would have you turn to the people at your table, but we are this lovely online virtual community today. And so if you can take a moment in the chat, but don't hit enter yet, where it says all panelists and attendees, and just something you're comfortable sharing, one or two things about yourself. And then I'm giving you a chance to type while I talk. What are two things that are central to your identity, or something fun? And then I think I've given you enough time here, and I'm going to say, please hit enter when I reach go. 3, 2, 1, go. There we go. Awesome. So let's just take a moment and read this, because if I gloss over it, then there was no point in having you share it, right? It is lovely to see who we are. And I really enjoyed the way Pat had people kind of talking before the webinar about where you're from. Martinis and cheese. I love it. Because that to me evokes a really fun kind of either comfort or community or something. Native Texan, yes, so much of who we are is from where we were raised or where we live. AJ, awesome. I have known AJ since I joined the equity committee, and love the proud dad and all the sharing. It's amazing. A mom, wife, sports mom. Yes. I think sports mom is its own life world. Early riser. Yes, this is wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I'm having trouble with my mouse and comments. Educator and coach. You know, Pat, sometimes coaching is being like an educator, but herding cats at the same time. So wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing about yourselves. I love that. Curtis, good to see you. Okay, so one technique you can use in a virtual world when you're doing math problems is, you know how sometimes the fastest students will hit an answer, and then the students who haven't maybe worked out a problem yet will stop working because they see the answer in the chat. If you say to your students, don't hit enter until I tell you when, that gives all of your students a chance to try and solve it, and then they can pop up their answers in the comments. Okay, come back. Oh, the thinker. So disclaimer to start this talk. I do not purport to have all the answers. I'm going to raise some questions today about context and relevance, and I don't have the answers, but as a good friend Ben says, it's really important to dialogue about it, to have conversations, and to really give it some thought. So thank you all for joining this conversation. Pat's going to get us started with our poll questions. Okay, so Pat, the first poll question, please. Context, do you agree, strongly agree, neutral, or disagree that context provides an important framework for helping students connect with mathematic concepts? And there's no right and wrong answer. I hope that's obvious. So go ahead and click, and then when Pat sees that the majority of our participants have responded, he will close the poll and post the results. There we go. Great. So we're all preaching to the choir. One of the reasons I ask this is because some colleagues really do feel like they just need these skills and we move on, and that's okay. So I just want to know my audience. 2. Oh, sorry. There we go. I include word problems on every unit, module, and assessment. Pat will put the poll question up. So I have to admit, I've been teaching over 15 years, 12 at the community college. And when I look back on some of my old tests, I can tell you, I have found some old algebra-based, you know, basic algebra tests that were all skill and drill. And so here, even though, you know, I say I include, there was a time in my teaching where I didn't, where I might have said to you, oh, you know, word problems are important in the class, they're great for homework, but on the test, I don't want to freak them out or stress them out. I just want to test their skills. Okay, next, when it comes to assessments. So what this is to tell me is, are you writing your own questions? Do you create your own tests? Or are you using like a computer math program where they come canned? Or do you have a departmental assessment that the department writes them? And I can say I fall under all of those categories. So for some classes, I write my own tests. For some classes, I actually have a computer program. And then for like a college algebra, we have a common assessment. So I am all 3 of those. Excellent. Other. Can someone put in chat what the other is? Would other be like some of each? All of them. Thank you very much, Brianna. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So when you use a standardized common assessment, or you use the computer programs, you can have a real challenge with some of the wording in these. And so sometimes you have no control over it, but I have found that a lot of times departments will come back every couple years and cycle around and reevaluate. And when we get to that point that you reevaluate, then that's a great time to raise some of these issues and look at them. Okay, conversions of units. So if we're going to do a problem, here's something you might see. Convert 5 feet to meters. Now, mind you, I haven't given any, state your answer to 3 decimal places or anything like that. But in the general context, what do you think of this question? It's fine. You could pick a better context. You don't mind, but you could see how somebody else would not like it, or what were they thinking? Pat has posted the poll. Should just take a moment. Okay, do we have the, there it goes. Wonderful. Yeah, because it has no context, right? And it is a perfectly fine question if you're just, developing a skill. Okay, and what were they thinking? Yeah, I love this. This is really interesting. Let's continue to the next one. All right, so Jillian gave birth to a baby that weighs 7 pounds. She's texting her mom in England and needs to send the baby's weight in grams. How many grams does the baby weigh? The baby weighs blank grams. Okay, so we have a poll question for this. Yes, Joan, you are absolutely right. And Brianna, I'm going to explain the goal in just a moment. So what do you think of that question? When we get the results, I'll tell you something kind of funny, or not funny, but give you a reflection on it. So is this question perfectly fine to give to students and include in class? Do you think that the context could be chosen better? Do you see, it's fine with you for this to have this question, but you can see how someone else might not like it? Or do you think this question is outrageous? Perfectly fine question. Okay, so the funny part to me about this question is, and I wrote it, so I'm not judging anybody else. I actually wrote this question, is when I go back and look at my own children's baby weights, the hospitals actually give you the weight in grams, and then you have to convert them to pounds. But I contrived this question because I wanted the skill to be to go from convert from pounds to grams. Okay, and here we are, conversion of units. This is the last, I promise I'm getting to the point. I promise. The Border Patrol seizes 6 pounds of an illegal substance at a checkpoint. How many grams of the substance did they seize? They seized blank grams of the substance. Now this is one that was actually in a computer math program. The other ones I just kind of wrote myself. Okay, so Pat's got our poll. And let's see what our reaction is. I would like to say there is no right or wrong answer to any of these questions I've just done. We really are just trying to consider an idea. And if you're still not clear what that idea is, bear with me. I promise I'm getting to my punchline soon. And here are the results. Right. Okay, so we've shifted from where most of the questions were perfectly fine, responses were perfectly fine, maybe picking a better context. You can see how someone else might. So I ran this question by my workmate, my work friend, who is a chemistry teacher. And when he read it, he was thinking of pharmaceuticals in Canada. And he's like, yeah, I think it's fine. But then upon reflection, he realized that if a student was in a math class and saw this question, if they had had a negative experience coming through some kind of border patrol checkpoint, they could actually be having an emotional response to this question that has absolutely nothing to do with the typical student reaction to word problems, which is I hate word problems. So, I think I have two more examples. So if you think that question is perfectly fine, that's great. One of my goals of this talk is to try and raise awareness of how some other students sitting in your class might have a negative reaction to a border patrol question, where somehow in their life experience, they have had some kind of negative interaction with a border patrol. Can you think of your student population? Okay. I have different student populations between my Bellarmine University students and my Jefferson Community and Technical College students. So I can see a real contextual difference between the reactions I get with students. This one we can blow through pretty quickly. The McKees Point Yacht Club. So when I used this question before, or actually I didn't choose this question, but my colleagues and I were laughing about it, and we were like, how many of my students can relate to a yacht club? And if you're going to do a voting theory question, why would you choose the context of a yacht club board of directors and all the different country clubs and golf clubs? Most of my students are not really able to relate to that. Yes, Stacy, thank you. Pat, let's go ahead and skip the surveys on this. Well, we can do it. Yeah, can you skip it? Yeah, okay, let's skip it. I think we're fine. And then the last context is the Iditarod sled race. So this was a real question that we included in our basic algebra developmental math course. And it actually has two layers of context and relevance difficulties. One, for many younger students, they have no idea what the Iditarod sled dog race is. They have not heard of it. It does not make it into their cultural awareness. The second thing is the actual language. As a math tutor in a computer lab with hundreds of students from all the classes, I was ready to ban this question about the 15th time I helped a student with it. If the musher is 3 times as far from Anchorage as from Nome. So that's one thing to consider. Is this something in life that we really encounter and a skill that a student really needs to be able to translate that? Or is it a poorly worded, contrived math problem that is really unnecessarily challenging? I am all for challenging word problems, don't get me wrong. My question on this one is it unnecessarily, unrealistically difficult? And you don't have to put an answer in the chat yet. We're going to consider it. So here we are, and I have made it to my punchline. Yay, we made it. Yes, I do too. I really felt like that whole 3 times as far from one to the other is contrived to try and force them into a specific mathematical equation. All right. So the punchline of this is, especially in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of the border patrol question, okay? How can a student focus on solving a mathematical algebraic problem or whatever skill you're testing them on if they're having an emotional reaction to the context, okay? Your amygdala, your lizard brain, your fight or flight hits when you have that response. So what we're asking is, if there's no relevance, if they're reading a question about a yacht club, they have absolutely no interest in it at all. If they're reading about border patrol, they could be having some kind of negative reaction. At the same time, we want to find out ways that we can incorporate relevant and relatable text that may not be easy. So let's keep this in the back of our mind as we go through. Oh, there we go. Go through this. So the second aspect of my question to you is, how do we prepare students for confusing language or poorly worded questions? So we're going to keep that in the back of our minds. I received this from one of our software specialist companies that say students want math to be relevant. They want to see a connection to their world and how it applies to their lives. And as Title III grant, we actually really took these words and created a quantitative reasoning, contemporary math / math for liberal arts class that had this relevant, relatable context. So that's what we're looking. What do our students look like, and what is intersectionality? So intersectionality is the idea of how 2 or 3 of our sociological factors come together. I do have a definition coming up, but I wanted you to think about your identity, okay? Your race, your gender identity, your religion, your nativism, your sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, your ability, your ableism, and your ethnicity. And I know you all are all capable of reading that slide, but I wanted to take a moment to read of each of the categories to think about, where do you have maybe privilege in a category versus maybe a challenge in a category, that you might be experiencing some sort of discrimination or challenges. Oh, sorry. If I click on the chat to see if it's reading and then I click back on it, it advances the slide. So a common point of confusion when we talk about intersectionality is the difference between race and ethnicity. All right. And this is this slide, this information comes from my friend who teaches sociology, and it's literally verbatim what he shared with me as I was exploring and learning about intersectionality. Okay, so race and ethnicity are different. Race is based on your observable physical characteristics, whereas ethnicity is defined around your cultural characteristics. Okay, so you can have a race, you being Black, but you can also have different ethnicities. Now, one of the ideas of intersectionality is that 2 or more of these sociological factors can come together to create an additional or a challenge in a way that can't be looked at in isolation or isolating factors. Okay, sorry, I get distracted. I love the comments and then I get distracted, so my apologies. So years ago, when I first learned about intersectionality, this slide here is one of the slides where I started, actually the next few slides. And we have Bob the stripy triangle, right? So he's a triangle, but he's also stripy. So if Bob needs help, does he go to the support group that supports triangles, or does he go to the support group that supports stripes? And then the kind of idea is that some groups that support triangles might reject him or not support him because he's striped, and vice versa. That's the reason they use triangles and stripes, is to try and not, to keep it general, to generalize. Here is the promised definition, all right? And the reason I list the Columbia Journalism review is because that's where I got this definition, even though it comes from the Oxford English Dictionary. So it's the interconnected nature of social categorizations, which we saw, as creating an overlapping and independent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Okay. Now, let's see what that actually looks like in reality. My friend, the sociologist, gave me this example, and I think it's really shows up in the data. If any of you have looked at your college's data broken out by sociological factors. Some people call it an equity gap, which is maybe, there's better language around it than an equity gap. Students who have been oppressed or not had, the resources and been discriminated against, there's a clear gap in some of the data for colleges and their success rates, right? So data can demonstrate clearly that Black students are less likely to succeed in college. And our own Jefferson Community Technical College has a lot of programs designed specifically for Black male students. So Black male students are even less likely to succeed. Black male students living below the poverty line, and transgender Black students living below the poverty line. So you can see that each one of these sociological factors creates its own, additional challenge. And you can't, we sometimes want to silo people, put them in these nice separate silos, and intersectionality kind of blows up that idea. All right, so here is a challenging idea that just provides some resources for you with the gender unicorn. And it looks at gender as a spectrum rather than black and white. And I'm going to talk about this some more, but for those of you who have resources, there's a program called One Day at a Time. Now, if you're like me and you're old enough to remember the original version with Julie McKenzie and Phillips, and now I'm Natalie Bertinelli, okay, from the 70s, and Snyder, they have reimagined it in the late 2000s here with a Cuban family. It's an amazing show. So what I'm giving you is a reference to season 2, episode 3, the first 3 minutes. And it talks about gender nonconforming or gender, non-binary gender individuals and their pronouns. So here's a small thing, and I've learned this, is that you shouldn't ask someone what their preferred pronoun is, because it's not preferred. It's just, what are your pronouns? And so these are really small ways you can learn out. I would like to point out that it is becoming much more, I don't know if common is the right word, but it's been integrated into equity issues in the college. At Bellarmine, students can go into their student profile and actually select their pronouns, and it's listed on your student class roster. Okay. Here is something that really matters to me. So Aristotle, right? Good old Aristotle, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When you look at this image, do you see the six sociological factors that come together to form a student? Or do you see a cube, a 3-dimensional image of a student? I don't know. Why don't we go ahead and take a moment and have you all put that. Thank you, Stacy. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Can you see the cube? Do you see the 3-dimensional? Or do you just see what's on the surface? And there's no judging at all. Honestly, when I'm wearing my glasses right now, I just see the surface area. I'm not seeing the cube. I have to see the cube. So, yeah. I saw the cube first, right? I have to admit, I like those psychology images where they put up an image and they're like, well, what do you see first? I love the ones that respond that you can see both. Yeah, it is. It's good that you can have your brain. I think maybe that's part of our mathematical skills and our familiarity with geometry, that we can see them both. My punchline is that a classroom should be welcoming to the entire student, to the entire community, to all of them as a whole, as a 3-dimensional being, and not just, superficial tick boxes, of sociological factors. So we need to do that. This is my college, Jefferson. This is slightly outdated, but my community college is one of the most diverse colleges in our state, and that actually includes the larger universities. So we are predominantly 55% female, 53% first generation, 66% Pell Grant eligible. We have 80 plus countries represented. So we have a very, very large English as a second language population, which is important to know about your school, because if you are having a lot of math problems that are relevant or cultural references in America, someone who is a foreign student may have no idea. I mean, they just, whew. Let's see. Also minorities, and 31.8 underrepresented minorities. Again, I think the language around underrepresented minorities might be changing as we try and take things in. And so you can also see our population, 12,000 students. All right, so here we go. This is what we need to talk about. Should you include difficult or sensitive topics to provide context in your classes? Should we be talking about issues around Black Lives Matter, gender identity? Wow, what about the financial collapse? If you're in a math course doing investments, are you doing investments with an 18% interest rate, or are you talking about the half of 1% interest that we're earning? Financial markets and financial loss in markets, graphs of COVID-19 and the pandemic. So these are good questions to consider. And one of the things is there's no definitive right answer on this. Let me come back and I click here. So this is one of the things that I did in my college algebra class this spring. I didn't include any mathematical problems, which one of my Bellarmine colleagues did. He wrote a really cool question for his calculus class about the logarithmic growth rate. But when we were learning exponential and logarithms, I included this screenshot from very, very early on. It's, you can see the date at the bottom, March 27th, 2020. And at that time, the COVID cases were doubling every 2 days, 3 days, maybe every week. If you look now, they're doubling. Well, I guess I haven't looked today, but a week or so ago, they were doubling about every couple of days. Excuse me, couple weeks or a couple months, depending on where in the country you are. So I gave you a QR code in case you were interested. CNN has a lot of graphs and references to the COVID-19. And you can also look at exponential growth. And I did it in a, when I introduced the subject, one of the things I said is, I understand some of you may have been impacted by COVID-19. I understand it can be a difficult thing that you're going through. So we're going to just take a look at how some of this information is represented in graphs and how it relates to what we're studying. And so I showed them the exponential growth. I showed them the logarithmic doubling time. And the only reactions I got from my students in the comments were, wow, that's amazing, or wow, that's really interesting. I did not have anybody, say to me afterwards that it was very upsetting. So that's a strategy, though, that you can do with your classes. If you're going to talk about something different, is say, if anybody would like to talk about this after class or outside of class, I encourage you to do so. Another topic that I promised I would come back to, right? When we talked about the gender unicorn and the spectrum, this is a really, well, personally, I will speak for myself. I think it's an important topic, but it also can open up landmines for in-class discussions, okay? So in the statistics class, a lot of questions and a lot of older textbooks center around gender as a binomial variable or binomial random variable. I don't teach statistics, but I'm trying to be technically precise. Male, female. Okay, and then they'll do a distribution showing you're this or this, okay? Sorry, I got distracted again by the comments because I see it. Okay, so I have taught the contemporary college math where we do just an introduction to statistics. Thank you for bearing with me. And in that, I talked about how our college uses this third column here, male, female, non-binary, prefer not to disclose. And some use male, female, other. And we talked about how some variables can be numerical or categorical, such as age. Age could be a category or it could be a number. So we were really exploring a different way of looking at variables and how to do it. And of course, one of the most common things that happens when you raise this issue of gender in a statistics classroom, in a math classroom, is you might get someone who says, you are born male or female. That's it, okay? I've had one of my colleagues actually emailed me because I asked my stats teachers what they do. And he said one of his students, just started using very specific anatomy language to say you are either a man or you are a woman. And so one of the things that I did in my 146 class is to talk about how, okay, I can see, your point of view, but, things, our understanding of things has kind of changed and evolved. And we said, maybe there's another way of looking at it, and talked about some of the relevance. The good news is that was not my first day of class. This is not the first interaction I had had with my students. And we had built a relationship up to that point where even though it could be challenging and difficult, you can have that conversation and introduce these ideas to your students. Not that you need to change their mind, not that you need to confront them, but just to, introduce it. When I surveyed my friends, very small, informal survey of people who teach statistics, the thing that I heard was topic avoidance. They do not use gender in their statistics class. They do not use it as a binomial random variable. And in fact, for the textbook that uses it, that has it as a binomial male-female example, the instructor was saying, oh, well, we kind of need to update that. And then got that typical difficult response from the student, and then now we're at topic avoidance. So you have to decide how important it is in your classroom to raise these issues, to raise awareness and relevance, and where you feel comfortable. One of the ideas I would like to suggest is that you can normalize unfamiliar content and model respect for differences. In other cultures, so this slide is just going to be very briefly. In other cultures, there are multiple genders. And I've given you some examples here that I pulled off an article, and you can pretty much Google it pretty simply. And you can also do a subsequent question. Our college collects data on these sociological factors so we can analyze the difference in success rates. So they actually will want to know if someone is cisgender, which is the gender they identify with matches the gender they are born with, or if they are transgender, where the gender they identify with or the gender they are now does not match the gender they were born with, or prefer not to disclose. So one of the reasons I have found that my college raises these questions in the surveys they do for students is to try and analyze the success rates and target their resources and their interventions towards the students who need the support the most. Okay, expanding these ideas. I do have an activity where we're going to come together and do put these ideas to use. But I'm not sure if these ideas that I put on this slide are obvious or not, but they're kind of things that I think might help you take on some topic that is relevant but also maybe challenging. So obviously modeling compassion for multiple points of view. You're not there to change their minds. You're not there to argue with them, of course. In my classroom, the second one, I have to start that from the first week of class, because we do in our, especially in the contemporary college math, talk about a lot of issues that can create strong feelings. So talk about being respectful of other students' points of views and ways to dialogue differences. You know, last thing we want is, even with a non-contextualized math problem, if they're trying to get the right answer, you don't want them going to the mat arguing over who's right and who's wrong. Gently suggest different ways of looking at a situation. I find providing additional resources is nice, because then the students who are interested can follow up, and the students who aren't interested can just disregard them. And so it's hurts nothing to do that. And then using exploratory learning opportunities. That's where I've heard from other faculty who, oh my gosh, there are some amazing statistics instructors who provide data sets about prison rates and prison sentences, and they'll have students analyze the data and then come and draw their own conclusions to really try and make a point, instead of, they're not beating their students over the head with it, they're not, but when they're trying to teach a statistical concept, they're using this context that allows for conversations and raising awareness of issues in our society. I think Carrie Muir gave a talk on it, and it was pretty amazing. Okay, so here we are now, ready to do some work. Our brains are full of all these ideas of how the words in a word problem matter, how the context of a word problem matters. And we want to make it relevant, relatable, and reasonable. The reasonable part is that trying to avoid a contrived situation, trying to avoid something that is forcing the student to do the math some way, instead of just putting out a problem and seeing how the student solves it. Maybe, one thing that's awesome is when students find different ways of solving them, and they can share those. So I don't have a survey, but this is the question we did choose. So remember, harken back to the Border Patrol seizing 6 pounds of an illegal substance and converting it to grams. So this problem goes from grams to ounces, but it's a two-part question with higher order thinking. So a chemistry teacher has 740 grams of a substance, and he wants to separate the substance into 3-ounce jars. How many 3-ounce jars can he completely fill? So can you just take a moment and put in the chat how you think about that question in terms of, is it better than the Border Patrol question? Do you like the context? Do you think the word substance is too vague and general, that it needs to be something specific? Or do you think this is a good contextualized conversion question? No need to wait on typing in your comments. As soon as you have a thought, go ahead and type it in. And Rebecca, thank you. I totally understand what you're saying about your students in New York City not wanting to hear about it in class. That is being so aware and knowing your audience. Yeah, Melanie, I agree. I love that it's a multi-step question. I totally appreciate it being too abstract, and that hits me in the back of my mind. For chemistry students, more context on the substance. Name the teacher, name the substance. What a nice idea, Anna. Good to see you. Oh, chemistry was also not my favorite class, but I only took it in high school, not in college. And I have to say, we all know this because we're teachers. For me, it was my chemistry teacher. I did not have a good experience with my chemistry teacher, and therefore it completely and totally translated into the content. Yes, Steve, I love your question about is ounces weight or volume? Yes. Very nice. Stacy, having students create their own context. I love to have students write questions in class. I do that a lot with combinations and permutations. Yeah.
Jennifer, let me jump in for a second. Some of you are replying. Make sure you change the to line to all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, Jennifer and I are the only ones seeing your comments. And if Jennifer is referring to those, nobody knows what she's talking about. Make sure your to line is to all panelists and attendees. And thank you for, Brianna, thank you for letting us know that.
Cool. Okay. So your comments are great. And I have really, obviously, I'm giving this talk, so I have given it a lot of thought. How do we find these contexts? How do we find something that's going to fit the culture or the cultural relevance, cultural awareness of our students? I mean, have you ever made a joke about The Simpsons in class and then your students look at you like they have no idea what you're talking about? I mean, awkward moment. I have to really be careful about my references in class, or sometimes I'll just ask them, have you all ever heard of? And then sometimes cultural ideas come back through, TikTok that's common, or some TV show that has done it. Yes, AJ, pop culture references from a long time ago. The Bueller jokes. Yes, one of my faculty members did a video from scratch, and the first minute of it is him imitating the Ben Stein's voice with Bueller, and I thought, are students going to even understand it? Playing cards. Oh my gosh, when I do probability in class, there are so many students who have never used them. And not just my foreign students. A lot of my Native American students don't, I shouldn't say Native American, a lot of the students who were born and raised in my community have no idea what a deck of cards is. Plug it in, plug it in. Okay, you all are so on board with this. So hit or miss, sometimes you come up with something great, sometimes you get a question. For those faculty who are teaching with a computer math program where you can't control the questions, and if you're like me and you don't know how to edit the questions, basically you're trying to pick the best of the lot, and you do what you can. So what I could do is choose the chemistry question over the border patrol question. So because my work is not paper and pencil, this was actually a common exam question for every section of our contemporary college math. So in some of these cases, all you're doing is using an extra filter, an extra mental filter, as you select problems for your students out of your computer math program. If you're writing your own on paper, that's different. Or you can take a computer math program, and if you have the technical ability, you can edit it to give the teacher a name and to give the substance a name. And then, wow, you've really made something relatable and relevant that can help make them less miserable. I do tell my students, honestly, one of my goals is to get them to hate math less. And if I can do things to improve their learning experience, such as providing context that gets them excited about what they're learning, then definitely it's worth my energies to do that. Okay. All right.
Jennifer, we have about 10 minutes.
Wonderful. Well, we are there. Okay. So what I had is I want to ask you all. Pat and I kind of talked about this, and we weren't sure whether or not we would be able to do breakout groups. But actually, with only 10 minutes left, we are going to just spend 2 minutes on this. I'm looking at my phone, my clock. It's 3:51. We're going to spend 2 to 3 minutes. What context do you think would be a good context or a relevant question? Can you come up with a question that you think would be good? I was waving to Galaxy Tab. Okay, so let's just have a short discussion in our chat to ask, well, what context do you think is good for doing a conversion problem, and how do you think it would be relevant to students? I'm going to type an example that I've shared that I think is really good. So
Jennifer, while you're typing, I'll jump in and take advantage of the fact that I'm on a microphone. What I like to do in things like this is let the students write the problems. Let them get together and write theirs. They will use contexts that are familiar to them and probably to other students, and I get a lot of good ideas that way.
Pat, your classes are amazing, where you have students do, you know, the a lot of the applications and the Marvel. It's amazing. I think that's a great idea. So what I type, exchanging money country to country. Yes, I think that's great. Time conversions, yeah, especially if you're doing, well, yeah. I mean, I struggle with time conversions, and I'm a math teacher, so that's good. Did my example show up? So what I have students do is convert 5 feet 5 inches into meters, because 5 feet 5 inches is an average height, and it gives students an idea of how big a meter is. Dennis, I love your example, because candy is always good. And Lawrence, do you go by Lawrence, or do you use a different name? Yeah, cooking is great. More candy is the best. Nursing program, oh my goodness, yes. If you have a lot of nursing students, then our nursing program actually accepts our contemporary college math, because we included dimensional analysis. And so we do a lot of medicine questions and conversion of units. And of course, I always give them the example of, you know, Dennis Quaid's babies almost dying because the medicine they were given was off by a factor of 10. And so, okay, so the candy is great. Cooking is wonderful. Olympic records in the past. Yeah, we used Olympic records to do rate of change in an algebra class by finding slope, to write a linear equation in the world record mile. What currency students are used to, and see if they know the going conversion rates. So stride length and height. Dosage information, yeah, these are really good. How much Apple storage? Oh my gosh, what a great context. How many photos should I delete? Okay, this is great. Let me finish, because we only have a couple minutes. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I have, even though I can't see your faces and hear your voices, I have enjoyed reading your thoughts and sharing them with you. Okay, the last example I have. So I looked at including this question in my online calculus class this summer. And it was my husband who challenged me to say, are your students going to have the cultural relevance to be able to relate to this question? The current in a circuit for lights, the cost of a taxi, you know, because many kids today, what do they use? They use Lyft, they use the other one, Uber. You know, They're not as familiar with a taxi. And so some of these questions could be culturally difficult. So they're not going to be able to get it right not because they don't understand the mathematical concept of a function, but because they don't understand the context of what's happening there. Okay. I'm going to skip this. This was a question on percentages. Sorry, I'm keeping a close eye on the time because I want to get to my last couple of slides. But basically, it provided some data on single bias hate crime offenses, and then it asked for a frequency distribution, and then it just asked some basic comprehension questions on it. You can use lots of neutral examples. Be careful of the surnames you choose. And then here's the end of it. Getting students to think. So raising awareness in your class through context and thoughtful questions is at the very heart of intersectionality. I cubed stands for intersectional instruction, inclusive intersectional instruction. So it's okay to take a chance. Here are some resources you can
Jennifer, your PowerPoint doesn't seem to be advancing.
Oh no.
We're still on the now you try it slide.
Let me see. My screen is paused. How do I do that? How do I unpause it? I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and try again because it's telling me it's paused and I don't know how. So if these ideas are interesting to you, I would encourage you to join the Equity Committee where we have so many of these discussions. The AJ you have been seeing in the comments is the chair of our committee, and it's equityandmathed@gmail.com. And AJ, maybe you could pop that into the comments. And then we're actually having a spotlight on equity in July. So in the entire month of July, we're going to be having some blogs, some discussion posts, research and information, and I would encourage you all to maybe pick one or two events. I understand, we're all in summer and it can get overwhelming to be having all these resources. I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten an email with 5 or 6 links, and then I just get so overwhelmed with the information overload that I don't end up really doing any of them. So maybe just pick a couple. Do you all have any closing thoughts or questions about this idea of cultural context and relevance in word problems? Have I made a strong enough case to convince you to maybe take another look at your word problems, or maybe to include more, or maybe to take on another topic? More webinars. Stacy, that's great. The webinar groupies, right, Pat? Is there anything else or any other closing thoughts? Thank you all so much for your feedback. This is very, very near and dear to me, and I appreciate you all taking the time out to come. I hope, I actually love hearing the group of folks that are attending all these webinars, because I'll be honest, I've been so worried that people would hit webinar fatigue or be webinared out that I wasn't going to have anybody come today. And I also, the interactive part, Dennis, yeah, that was really important to me. You can Blackboard Collaborate, Blackboard Ultra, Zoom, Teams, they all have ways that you can do polls. Many of them have ways you can do breakout sessions with your students, and the 3, 2, 1 in the comments, so that way the fast students don't give the answer up before the slower students have even gotten a good start on it. So thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And Pat can make the slides available if you're interested, or the recording. And that's all I have for my presentation.
All right, so if you haven't already done so, we could thank Jennifer in the in the chat area. So just a few things to wrap this up. Thank you for participating in our webinar. If you're not a member, please consider joining. We would love to have you as a member. We do have a presence on Facebook. There are other professional development opportunities coming up. Conference, as far as I know, for Spokane, everything is still a go, but it's touch and go. There are more webinars coming up, traveling workshops. The recording, I have recorded this session. Some of you mentioned that in the chat, and I do get a chat transcript, so I will send out the full recording along with Jennifer's PowerPoint and the chat transcript if you missed anything. Hopefully within the next couple of days, I can get that sent out to you. And then here is the QR code and the link to evaluate the webinar. If you would like a certificate of attendance, at the end of the survey, the evaluation is a place where you can request a certificate. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to put the link to the survey in the chat. Okay, Jennifer, well done. Thank you. Thank you all for attending. Were there any questions that we missed? I think we got everything. So well done.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Thanks so much. Thank you all.
You'll have a good day and be on the lookout for more webinars coming soon.